the land, because the real scarce resource when you want to make renewables, you need sun, wind, but also land. And here you have huge surface in that country. Kazakhstan could become a real source of electricity, even not only for the country, but to export it. You could imagine in the future, we will need, in Europe, a lot of electricity to have a subsea cable through the Caspian Sea and to bring electricity, green electricity from Kazakhstan even to Europe. So it's very important.
Is that realistic on a cost basis to produce here and transmit, distribute?
It's very expensive. It's very realistic. All that, it's a place where really the cost of production of electricity is low. Space, it's very competitive. And so, transition will require a lot of creative ideas. And we need to electrify the world. And so, again, and I think I'm very happy because we have this oil and gas partnership for many years that we are a credible partner, and we are convincing the Kazakh authorities to trust us to develop this project.
So how much is it from the other side, not your side per se, I'll come to your side in a minute, how much is it from the other side a mindset? If a country has been making the largest part of the economy out of oil and gas and is suddenly told that the earth is flat and actually they've got to move to renewables, the mindset shift is quite considerable.
Yes, of course, but Kazakhstan, again, by the way, most of the electricity in Kazakhstan is coming from coal, strangely. They export their oil. The gas, as in many countries, was not so valorized. They want, in fact, the vision that Kazakhstan, and we share that vision for the transition, is a mix of gas and renewables. So they need to produce electricity, to decarbonize. They are blessed with gas, and they are blessed with huge renewable capacity. So I think Kazakhstan has a strong will to be a positive partner of the transition. Of course, they will continue to export their oil. But they could also, it's not a reason not to be at the forefront. Like, I would say, there is a lot of debate about COP28 and the Sultan being the chair, but Abu Dhabi has the same policy. It's very strong in oil and at the same time, very strong in renewables. So it's compatible.
I'm glad you took me there. I'm glad you took me to those deeper waters. Can you understand the skepticism bordering on cynicism when an oil-producing or a high-energy-producing country, fossil fuel-producing country, becomes head of COP?
But I think it's a mistake. If we want to... Climate is a global challenge. We have to embark everybody. And I think if you want to make the revolution will go through the mindset of all producing countries and all consuming countries. At the end, it makes, if only Europe and the US are the stars of green revolution, the climate change will continue to move. But we are not able to change alone. So I think putting under the spotlight and the fact that Abu Dhabi has accepted to be the chair of this COP, it's...
But you don't see it...
It could have been easier for them to stay hidden and to say,
You don't see it as letting the fox into the chicken house.
No, I think it's a way to force the fox to change his mind as well. We should think that.
But we are skeptical because, as you know, and I'm not...
No, we are skeptical in the Western world.
Right, but if you look at and not in your company cases, but if you do look at documents that have been released that show that oil companies knew about, dragged their heels and had to be dragged kicking and screaming.
But
you've heard all
honestly,
this.
We knew nothing more than the others. All that is, I'm sorry to tell you, all that is just... if we knew why the others we don't know, we think we have scientists on climate, I will tell you, the fact that everybody knew that something was happening with the climate, but the proof that it was coming from human activities, that it was anthropogenic activities, only came in the 90s, 95. By the way, the first climate summit for the first COP was in Berlin in 1995. I knew I was a member of the COP as a member of the French delegation as an advisor of the Prime Minister. So I participated to that. It's 95, it's not 75. Why? Because the consciousness that this change of temperature which was observed was linked to climate activity was established late, in fact. It was not clear. And in fact, it has been the huge breakthrough in the last 25 years that everybody, for me, accepts today, yes, it is linked to the human activity.
Do you believe that, and I realize I'm asking you to comment on your competitors, and you may find that a little difficult, but do you believe that the industry overall, the oil and gas industry, the majors, are committed?
Yes, they are, of course. I can tell you, I'm a member of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative. It's a CEO-led organization, and we are very serious around the table. Very serious about the fact that we need to abate our emissions. Then, the way to contribute to the transition, we in Totalenergies have decided to go to electrons, to renewables. It's not shared by all of us, but other companies have decided to go to hydrogen, others to CCS. At the end, we need all the solutions. But I think, to be clear, and the big debate today is not only where the debate, for me, is wrong. The priority today for everybody is not to destroy our energy system made of fossil fuel. We cannot destroy it today because we don't have the alternative. The huge priority is to invest to build the new system, the decarbonized system. When it will be built, and it will take trillions of dollars, then we can destroy, I would say, we can reduce, right. But to try to reduce fossil fuel before we build the energy system, it does not work. Look what happens, the price is going to the roof.
So that's an interesting aspect, because there is a dirty little secret which the climate the industry does not wish to necessarily face up to, which is we're going to need fossil fuel for the foreseeable future in very sizable numbers. It's the point you've just made. We cannot just turn it off.
It's not the industry, it is the population, it is the demand.
But people haven't quite worked that out yet.
There is a strange idea, very strange idea, that because we produce, we create the demand. No, the demand for oil, you know where it's coming from? A growing population, a legitimate wish from emerging countries, the population of emerging countries, to get out of poverty. And to get out of poverty, you need more energy. And if the demand in 2023 will be 102 million barrels per day, it's not invented by us. And if we don't supply it, what happens? The price is going up, as it happened last year. And when the price is going up, everybody is angry. And then I will continue. Last year, European countries have heavily subsidized fossil fuel. 500 billion euro have been spent. And we go to the COP to tell to emerging countries, you cannot subsidize. I think, again, it's a question, energy is a fundamental need for people, and affordability is essential. So it's not about antagonizing the players. We can be they want us to be the scapegoats, but at the end, it does not work. In fact, who has the money? We have the money. I made the money. When I invested 5 billion, people tell me it's not enough, 5 billion, but 5 billion, I am among the largest investors in renewables today on the planet. So, in fact, rather than antagonizing, the best is to play together and to work for it. But again, to be accused by what happens with Totalenergies, people are more commenting the fact that we continue to invest in oil and gas as negative, that we invest 5 billion in renewables.
You have to invest in oil and gas.
But I have to invest in oil and gas. So it's, the transition we have done is just incredible. I will tell you, this year, we spent 10 billion on new projects. Half of it on renewables, new energies, half of it only on oil and gas. Of the new projects, 10 years ago, we were spending $15 billion on new oil and gas projects. So we shifted ourselves. Right. Yeah. But we have to do both. Otherwise, we starve the planet for oil and gas.
The financing of your oil and gas investment, now you are large enough that you can do it out of your resources to a large extent. But there is a worry, because you're right, we're going to need oil and gas for a long time to come. Yeah. And many in the oil and gas industry are saying they cannot get the necessary capital investment now because it's a dirty word, and that the money's investors and CSRs and SDGs will not let them invest in.
I will tell you, it's maybe true from some European institutions. It's not true in the US. It's not true in Middle East. It's not true in Asia. And there is a lot of capital there. Because this part of the world, you know that they need the energy, they need the oil and gas. So maybe we'll change our traditional financial partners, which we have already done, in fact. But there is a lot of capital being, it's not, no, I will tell you what I already said. When there is money to make, you always find bankers.
And lawyers.
And lawyers, don't worry.
So this is you at the moment. This is your renewables, this is your revenues from oil and gas. Is it the speed like this? Is it faster? How do you envisage that shift will be?
I think, honestly, there we have reached a point where we invest 16, $18 billion per year. 1/3 will go to new energies, 2/3 to oil and gas. I think it's a right mix. Because now I need also my renewable integrated power business to deliver results, cash. For the first time this quarter, we have published the results. We made $400 million of results, a return of capital on 10%, which is good. But we need that machine to be cash positive. So our objective is that by 2030, we want all our new energy segment, our integrated power, to be cash positive. And then we'll continue to grow at a certain point, and our shareholders legitimately ask us to demonstrate that it can also fit the dividend that we serve. And I'm sure we will manage to do that. But it's a balance, and again, the balance is I mean, it's always the same question. People want to accelerate, but for the time being, you know, oil demand continue to grow every year. I'm sorry to tell you, the oil demand...
That's the bit that nobody... That's the bit that the climate activists necessarily don't want to face.
But you know, that's the reality of the process. Why I disagree with His Excellency Fatih Birol, you know, because the famous scenario, okay, I agree with the endpoint in 2050. Net zero, we need to divide the oil production by 4, oil demand by 4. Agreed. But to say that it's a straight line like that from today, when at the same time, the same IEA is announcing that the production of 23 will increase by 2 million, I would like somebody to explain me what we do.
Okay, so
we go down or we go up? What do we do? So I would like them, just to be consistent, because honestly I'm a little tired, to be obliged to answer to a scenario which is against the reality of the planet. That's the reality. It's not us who decide that.
How confident or otherwise are you that we meet the Paris targets?
I think we'll meet that.
The 1.5 degrees?
We'll meet it, but we'll not meet it the way it's described today. Just by the way, we'll not meet it by being net zero in 2050. By the way, I don't know if you can be net zero in 2050 when India announced 2070, China 2060. Half of the population of the planet, if you make the math, it does not work. But we'll do it, you know why? Because we'll have plenty of innovation. Because we need to believe, and strongly, in particular in negative emissions,
but
we'll find a way to capture carbon.
What if we don't?
Well, we don't, but we begin to. Why? Because again, there are also part of the activism is against developing some innovative solutions. You know, carbon capture and storage is part of the technology we need to develop. Direct air capture is a technology in which we need to invest. But the idea that we will stop burning fossil fuels tomorrow, it does not work. It's not the planet.
Let's look at real policies in this regard.
Having said that, to answer to your question, yes. I believe we can reach it. I also believe we strongly need to work on adaptation policies.
Go on.
That means that we cannot just be...
mitigation versus adaptation.
Yeah, it's both. It's both. It's not only mitigation, it's also adaptation. We need to prepare the case where we'll have difficulties to reach it.
The US, with its IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which had very little to do with inflation, but a great deal to do with everything else on the climate. This was a game changer.
Yeah.
And it was a reinforcing point, which I've always said. The US is frequently late to the party but when it gets there, it does it better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And this is an example of that. And now Europe is trying to cobble together a variety of IRA-like individual policies. But the developing world gets left behind. The investment will go to those countries that have got sophisticated subsidies and or programs ahead.
So, if we are consistent, we must also invest in this developing world, in this developing country. You know, just asking them to stop subsidizing fossil fuels and not giving solutions, I think all developed countries, we must also heavily contribute. You know, think to India.
Yeah.
If we do nothing, do you think that India will escape from coal? No. Because it's the most affordable energy, it's their only resource, and plenty of jobs. So let's invest with India in nuclear in India. That will be serious. Either we are ready to bring, you know, the famous $100 billion. What do we do today? Nothing. You know, we have made an agreement with South Africa, the famous transition, $10 billion, 11. When you look what is in the agreement, only less than $1 billion is a real gift from the Western countries to South Africa. So $10 billion is a loan. But you think that South Africa needs more debt?
So you're basically saying that as part of any longer-term climate agreement, we're going to have to, the developed world, the Western world, is going to have to pay more.
Of course, and to invest. And by the way, in terms of climate efficiency, the cost of abatement of CO2 in India is much lower than the cost of abatement of CO2 in Europe, where we have already a high efficiency. So we are somewhere in that, or in the US, we are somewhere in that way we think. We think nationally that we need to be at the forefront, which is good because we have a sort of legacy. But if we want to be efficient for climate, we need also to invest there. And this is what Totalenergies is doing. You know, when I'm investing in 1 gigawatt wind here, or in Iraq, or then in Uganda, where people criticize, I'm contributing there to help these countries to really decarbonize. But they have the population. So there is no, I think we should stop giving lessons to all the world. We must act. Because giving lessons, we are rich. And we give lessons to stop, to tell them, you need to stop.
How far can and should you use your muscle, I was going to say power, but it's really the financial muscle, investment muscle, on geopolitical issues? And the reason I ask this is you just mentioned one particular country. You mentioned Uganda, which of course...
For purpose. For purpose, because I knew you will come here.
Well, there we are then. Then you weren't disappointed.
Of course, I'm never disappointed by you.
You've then got, so you've got Uganda with its new LGBT horrific policy.
By the way, I can tell you, that before, I wrote a letter myself to the President Museveni to draw its attention that we have in our company some fundamental value. One of them is respect for each other. And I raised its attention, but of course it's a sovereign decision. I'm not substitute. But we were clearly, in our company, supportive of respecting any religion, sexual act, and to help him to think about it. And he answered to me, I will think about it. So I cannot impose, but I've done it without making any noise. You are the first to whom I say that, because I read some Twitters that we do nothing. No, we don't do nothing. But I will not, I'm an oil and gas CEO, I'm working for oil and gas, and then if we can use our influence, like we've done when there were some NGOs, which there were some journalists in Uganda, which were not allowed to go to visit our fields. I said to President Museveni, please, let them go. No problem. I want them to visit. So, and we have a capacity. Then, at the end, the Parliament of Uganda is sovereign. But again, we share the values.
I hear your point. All right, but now you've got the difficult bit.
No.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well,
oh, no.
Now
no, because I'm respecting the sovereignty of any country.
No, because working on the basis that you can't control people, places, or things, now they have passed the law, and this is an example, but I could use other places in the world on different issues. Afghanistan, for example, with the Taliban or whatever.
Don't make oil and gas in Afghanistan.
I'm just putting...
This one I've avoided it.
Right.
No.
But my point is, now they've done it, you have the ball is back in your court as to what you're going to do.
No, I will not. I will respect the law, and I'm not, again. You know how many, how many countries in Africa? Do you know how many countries in Africa have laws which are controlling
LGBT? Most of them.
Most of them, exactly. 35 out of 50. But why do we decide? I mean, we respect these rights in our company. And we will fight if any of your employees would have a problem, obviously. But why should we think that we are so arrogant that we need to impose to any country our vision of this issue? I mean, you want us to work
because
only
they're your values. Because
my value apply them, but I cannot say to us, I'm using my influence, and then I'm just looking to what is happening.
Because if there's no downside cost to the other side, if there's no detriment to the other side,
sorry.
Then
the idea that
it's a toothless request.
The idea that the Western culture dominates the world is wrong. You know, we are only 1 billion people in the West. There are 7 billion people on the other side of the planet. So let's respect the culture of everybody, because respect for each other is also for us. It's also for us to respect the culture of any countries. And I think, you know, it's a question of time. We didn't came in our societies to these LGBTQ rights immediately. It's quite new, in fact, when you think about it. So why do you want... There is an evolution in any culture. But the idea that we have the truth and that we think is good should be imposed to the planet, the answer by all these people is not true.
I guess there's a difference between...
No.
Well, here's the question. I guess there's a difference between an environment where LGBT is difficult and not easy, and an environment like Uganda where it has been criminalized to the point of the death penalty in certain circumstances.
But again, there is death penalty in other countries for other reasons, and I'm fundamentally against death penalty in any country. Can I decide that I will exit all the countries where is death penalty? The answer is no. I mean, again, and I think, by the way, that it's better to be present. It's better to vehicle our values, to repeat it. When I met President Museveni last time, we discussed about the right of NGOs. And we speak about human rights, to go and visit our plants. I think we make a better evolution to contribute to make the evolution of the mindset. But just think, okay, these guys, they don't do what we want, so there is a strange world where we sanction everybody today. So the planet is sanctioning everybody. It does not work. It does not work. And I think it's a mistake, honestly, for the Western countries to do that.
I hear what you say.
It's a huge mistake. Because at a certain point, they will tell you, okay, do what you want, but you know, we are more, population is high. So I think we must be cautious, and it's better to go there, to continue to speak, to continue with our people to value our code of conduct, rather than just saying, okay...
All right, let's turn to Ukraine and the situation now, the transition, and there's two real aspects to this, aren't there? There's the transition in Europe that was frankly put on steroids as a result of what happened. I mean, the speed with which Germany, for example... Remarkable. Although one can argue...
Which proves that you move quickly when you are obliged.
Well, you are, but I mean, which does raise the question, of course, why they continue to decommission nuclear. But that's another, an issue for the German.
It's their choice. We have to respect their choice as we respect the choice of other countries.
When you now look at, say, for example, the position that Russia puts itself in, the destruction, in a sense, besides obviously the loss of life, but the destruction of their own markets from the West. It's quite extraordinary.
But not only from the West. I think the mistake which will be paid by Russia for long in the field I know energy is that they are unfortunately demonstrating that they cannot be considered as a trusted supplier. Neither for Europe, but by other countries. You know, when you look to a supplier which is using energy as a weapon, which is what they have done, suddenly you break the trust, and in energy is fundamental. You have a supplier, you have a buyer. During decades, in fact, it was a strong argument before from Russia We are a trusted supplier. What they've done is they cut the trust. And obviously, Europe will never come back to such amount of gas. By the way, it was an over-reliance. But I think other countries are looking to that. I'm sure that in Beijing, they look carefully to what is happening.
But as long as the price is low, the Indians will keep buying.
Yeah, but I think, no, there is a huge lesson, I think, I was in Beijing recently, drawn by everybody in terms of energy security of supply, is diversification. The key word when you are importing energy, which is not the case of the US, it's the case of Europe, of Japan, of Korea, of China, of India. You need to diversify. And that is, I think, fundamentally what people, leaders should remind. Yes, you are always attracting what is low cost, the cheap gas for Germany, cheap oil today for India and China from Russia. But if you are over-dependent, then energy is so fundamental that you make a mistake. So, you know, the only answer to that is diversify your sources, go to Kazakhstan, which is a big source of oil and gas and renewables.
Were you surprised? Were you surprised at the debates within the EU over the sanctioning of I mean, first of all, oil from Russia, and then gas, and the countries like Germany, which were very, very resolute that they didn't want it on the list, and Hungary, for example, which continues.
I think, you know, at the end, it's a question of pragmatism. On oil, by the way, I was, frankly, ourselves, we decided immediately on March 21st, 1 month, to stop any oil import from Russia, because oil, we knew that we had alternatives. So the oil for us, we knew that we could find oil to feed our refinery in Europe, coming from Saudi Arabia, coming from everywhere. So oil is a global liquid market. No, we can get out of Russian oil. Gas, unfortunately, for Europe is much more complex, because we discovered suddenly that we had a lack of regas terminals, but we don't have enough storage, gas storage. And so the dependency on Russia was much more complex. And you know, for any government, to explain, the German government, to explain that in a developed country that suddenly you have a lack of energy, you are not super popular, you know? Yeah. I can tell you. And you have even the risk to lose the next election, or to have people will be super angry. Look what happened in Europe. So I think on the gas, of course, the mistake is that there was an over-reliance. Suddenly, myself, I discovered that the capacity of storage were not there. But you know, I had this interesting question from the President Macron very quickly. He told me, why do we have a lack of regas terminals in Europe? I answered to him, you know, because I listened to you. You explained to us that you don't want to continue to keep gas as an energy in Europe because of the Green Deal. Why do you want us to invest in regas terminals, which requires 20 years of horizon?
What did he say?
He told me it's a fair answer, and so I told him, and so I will not invest in onshore. I'm ready to bring floating terminals so that when it's floating, if you want to get rid of it, I can take it back to China or something else. And I told him I will bring 2 floating terminals. Thank you, Patrick. But he answered me, it's a good answer. You know, political leaders have to understand that we listen to them.
Okay.
So there was a lack of regas terminal, and suddenly it's a panic. So we built them, but floating for us.
So to bring it towards a conclusion, is there, what I'm hearing from you, in a very forthright fashion, is...
As you ask a question?
Well, that's fair enough.
It's the first time we make the interview, but it's fine.
It could be the last.
For sure.
What I'm hearing from you is basically... I don't want to say, it's not an irritation, it's not a resentment, it's not a frustration, it's all of those things, to both climate activists, to politicians, to everybody that basically says, get real about this.
Yeah, this is exactly what I think. I think, honestly, this climate transition cannot just become a religion. Energy is fundamental, it's a super serious matter. And so if we want to move, we need to look to the reality. You know, you progress when you face the reality. It's a motto for me in my company. Stories, things like that, you don't progress. You know, Germany has progressed a lot suddenly. Yeah. It was impossible to build a regas terminal in Germany, and we have managed to bring a floating unit in 6 months. By the way, suddenly all the permitting issues, which were fundamental, have disappeared. You know, so that's a proof that we can innovatively, but we innovate when we face the reality. So let's face the reality all together, and we'll find the solution for energy transition, but not by dreaming.
You're much more optimistic.
Of course I'm optimistic if we face the reality.
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 Most of us don't want
And
to
by the way,
most of us don't want to face
and by
reality.
the way, I will tell you, you, the media, have a huge role to play.
Oh, now wait a minute. It only took you 28 minutes to turn it on me. Yes, go on.
You have a huge role to play. A huge role to play in that field. To educate everybody, to face the reality. I'm serious about it. Because vehiculing, of course, all opinions are respectful, and I'm listening to everybody. But at the end, look what happened in 2022 in Europe.
And that's the reality.
And that's the reality. The reality is that energy crisis, panic,
Patrick,
putting ceiling on the price, subsidies, and that's
Patrick, I've got another secret for you. Most of us don't want to live in reality.
Yeah, but it's energy is the real world.
Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.